The night shift at the Global Deep Space Monitoring Station was usually quiet. Most operators spent their time watching endless streams of data, looking for anything unusual among the cosmic background noise. But on this particular night, everything changed. Jack Miller had been staring at his monitor for 6 straight hours when the first anomaly appeared. At first, he thought his tired eyes were playing tricks on him. The signal was unlike anything he had seen before, a clear, repeating pattern that stood out from the usual random space noise. "Hey Bill, come take a look at this," Jack called out to his supervisor, trying to keep his voice steady despite his growing excitement. Bill Walker, a veteran of 20 years at the station, walked over with his coffee mug in hand. His eyes widened as he looked at the screen. "Run it through the analysis program," Bill ordered, now fully alert. The computer began processing the signal, and within minutes, the results made both men gasp. The pattern contained perfect mathematical sequences, prime numbers, the value of pi, and complex equations that could only be artificial in origin. Within an hour, the station was buzzing with activity. Scientists from every department crowded around the monitors, and emergency calls went out to space agencies around the world. This wasn't just a signal, it was a message. Dr. Anna Peters, the station's lead cryptographer, worked through the night with her team. As dawn broke over the New Mexico desert, she burst into the main control room, her face flushed with excitement. "It's a distress call," she announced to the packed room. "And you're not going to believe where it's coming from." The signal's origin point was tracked to the outer edges of our solar system, in the Kuiper Belt. But what shocked everyone wasn't just the location. It was the scale of what they found. Initial scans revealed hundreds of massive objects, each one larger than anything humans had ever built in space. As the message was decoded, the situation became clear. A fleet of alien ships, carrying what appeared to be millions of refugees, had become stranded in our solar system. Their advanced propulsion systems had failed catastrophically after encountering an unknown space phenomenon, leaving them stranded at the edge of our cosmic backyard. But the most surprising part of the message was why they had specifically called for human help. The aliens had been observing Earth for some time, studying our broadcasts and transmissions. They had seen something in humanity that they believed could save them. Our unique ability to solve problems in ways their highly advanced civilization had never considered. The next 48 hours saw the biggest mobilization of scientific and engineering resources in human history. Space agencies worldwide began coordinating their efforts. Military satellites were repurposed to gather more data about the alien fleet. The United Nations called an emergency session, and for the first time in decades, the world's powers agreed on something. Humanity needed to respond. In the midst of all this activity, Jack Miller sat at his station, still monitoring the signal. He noticed something that others had missed in the chaos, a subtle change in the message's tone. The aliens weren't just asking for help, they were running out of time. Their life support systems were failing, and millions of lives hung in the balance. "They're not just stranded," Jack reported to his superiors. "They're dying up there." The news sent shockwaves through the command center. Humanity had just made first contact with an alien civilization, only to discover they might witness their extinction within weeks if they couldn't find a way to help. As the sun set on the third day since the signal's discovery, Earth made its decision. A message was sent back to the alien fleet, using their own mathematical language. "We're coming to help." Nobody knew exactly how humans could assist a civilization clearly far more advanced than our own. But something in our history of overcoming impossible odds, of finding simple solutions to complex problems, had made these aliens believe we were their last hope. The greatest engineering challenge in human history was about to begin, and the clock was ticking. The IS-2, humanity's most advanced space station, had never seen such activity. Engineers from every space agency on Earth worked around the clock to prepare for humanity's first meeting with an alien civilization. The chosen team consisted of the world's best problem solvers. Engineers, mechanics, and scientists who had proven themselves in impossible situations. Robert Thompson, known to everyone as Bob, led the engineering team. He wasn't what most people expected from Earth's ambassador to an advanced alien civilization. His hands were rough from years of practical work, and he believed more in wrenches and bolts than fancy computers. But his record of fixing unfixable problems had made him the clear choice for this mission. "Remember, folks," Bob addressed his team as they prepared to board the transport ship, "we're not going up there to show off. We're going to help." His team of 12 nodded, each chosen for their practical skills rather than their academic achievements. The journey to the outer solar system took 2 weeks, even with the newest fusion engines. As they approached the alien fleet, everyone fell silent. Through the viewport, they saw something that defied imagination. Hundreds of ships, each one bigger than any city on Earth, floated in the darkness. Their silver hulls sparkled with strange lights, making them look like stars that had been captured and shaped into vessels. The human ship docked with what they believed was the alien command vessel. Bob's hands were steady as he operated the airlock controls, but his heart was racing. As the door opened, he faced the first aliens humans had ever met. They were tall, slender beings with smooth, pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer. Their large eyes showed intelligence and, more importantly, desperation. The alien leader stepped forward, touching a device on its neck that allowed it to speak in perfect English. "We welcome you, humans," the alien said. "I am the fleet commander. We had almost lost hope before finding your civilization." Bob introduced himself and his team, trying to keep things simple and practical. The aliens led them through corridors that seemed to be made of flowing metal, explaining their situation as they walked. The fleet carried 5 million refugees, fleeing from a dying star system. Their quantum drive technology, which had carried them across vast distances, had failed after passing through an unusual space phenomenon. But that wasn't the worst part. "Our civilization has grown too dependent on automated systems," the fleet commander explained. "Over generations, we lost the understanding of basic mechanical principles. Our computers and quantum systems do everything for us. When they fail," the alien gestured helplessly. Bob exchanged glances with his team. This was why the aliens had called for humans. We still understood the basic principles of how things worked. We hadn't let computers do all our thinking. In the engine room, Bob saw the problem immediately. The aliens' advanced drives had beautiful designs, but they were too complex. When one part failed, the whole system crashed. There was no way to bypass problems or jerry-rig solutions. "May I?" Bob asked, pulling out an old-fashioned wrench from his toolkit. The alien engineers looked confused at the simple tool but nodded. Bob began examining the mechanical parts of their system that still remained. After an hour of investigation, he gathered his team. "Their fancy quantum drives are dead," he said, "but the basic laws of physics still work the same everywhere. We might not be able to fix their high-tech systems, but we can build something simpler that will do the job." The aliens watched in confusion as Bob's team drew designs on paper, actual paper, and made calculations using hand calculators. They couldn't understand why the humans weren't using advanced computers or quantum simulators. Sometimes, Bob explained to the bewildered fleet commander, "The best solution is the simplest one. Your ships don't need fancy quantum drives to move. They just need something to push them in the right direction." He held up his sketch, a massive but simple mechanical drive system that could be built with materials from Earth. It wasn't elegant or advanced, but it would work. The aliens stared at the drawing, trying to understand how something so basic could save their fleet. That's when Bob said the words that would be remembered in both human and alien history. "Let's stop thinking about how things should work and focus on making them work." The real work was about to begin. The alien council chamber fell silent as Bob finished explaining his team's findings. The vast room, with its glowing walls and floating displays, made the simple paper diagrams in his hands look even more out of place. 20 alien leaders sat around a curved table, their expressions hard to read but their body language showing clear distress. "You're saying our entire quantum drive system is beyond repair?" the fleet commander asked, his translator device making his voice sound hollow. "Yes," Bob replied, keeping his voice steady. "But that's not your biggest problem. Your real problem is that your civilization has forgotten how to fix things the simple way." He spread out several diagrams on the table. They showed basic mechanical systems, pulleys, levers, and gears, drawn in clear, simple lines. The alien engineers in the room looked at these drawings as if they were seeing a foreign language. Mary Cooper, Bob's chief mechanical expert, stepped forward. She pulled a small mechanical watch from her pocket, not a digital one, but an old-fashioned watch with gears and springs. "Look at this," she said, opening its back to show the moving parts inside. "This keeps perfect time using nothing but mechanical parts. No computers, no quantum technology, just clever engineering." The aliens gathered around, fascinated by the spinning gears and ticking mechanisms. One of them, a younger engineer, reached out to touch it with trembling fingers. We used to make things like this," the young alien said quietly, "in our history books before the quantum age. But it was considered primitive, inefficient. We replaced everything with smart materials and AI systems." Bob nodded. "And now those smart systems have failed, and you can't even build simple machines anymore." He wasn't trying to be cruel, but they needed to understand the gravity of their situation. The next few hours were like a basic engineering class. The human team demonstrated fundamental principles of mechanics that the aliens had long forgotten. They showed how force could be multiplied using simple tools, how energy could be transferred without complex computers, and how basic materials could be used to create powerful machines. "Your life support systems are failing because they're too interconnected," Bob explained, drawing on a fresh sheet of paper. "Everything depends on everything else. But we can bypass the failed systems with mechanical solutions. The problem is, we'll need to work fast." The alien council members looked at each other nervously. One of them stood up, his skin shifting to a darker shade of blue. "What you suggest goes against everything we believe about technological progress. To use such basic methods, it seems like moving backward." Mary spoke up again. "Sometimes you need to take a step back to move forward. Your people are in danger. Does it matter if the solution is elegant as long as it works?" The debate raged for hours. Some alien leaders couldn't accept using what they saw as primitive technology. Others were desperate enough to try anything. Meanwhile, reports kept coming in from across the fleet. More systems were failing every hour. Finally, the fleet commander raised his hand for silence. "Show us," he said to Bob. "Show us how these simple machines of yours could save our people." Bob and his team quickly set up a demonstration in the council chamber. Using materials from their own ship, they built a small but efficient mechanical pump, the kind that could help maintain life support systems without needing complex computers. The aliens watched in amazement as the pump worked flawlessly, driven by nothing more than precisely shaped pieces of metal working together. No quantum fields, no AI controllers, just pure mechanics. "This is just the beginning," Bob said. "We can scale this up. Build bigger systems. Replace your failed quantum drives with mechanical ones. They won't be as fast or elegant, but they'll get your people to safety." The young alien engineer who had touched the watch earlier stepped forward. "I want to learn," he said firmly. "Teach us how to build these things ourselves." Other alien engineers joined him, their earlier skepticism replaced by curiosity and hope. The fleet commander looked at Bob with new respect. "It seems," he said, "that we have forgotten something important in our rush to advance. Perhaps it's time we remembered." As the human team began organizing their first lessons in basic engineering, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. More systems were failing. They had the solution now, but would they have enough time to implement it? The race against time had begun. The largest workshop aboard the alien flagship had been transformed. Where once pristine quantum computers hummed, now the sound of hammers, wrenches, and human voices filled the air. Metal shavings littered the floor, and the smell of machined oil hung in the atmosphere, smells that hadn't existed in these ships for generations. Bob wiped sweat from his forehead as he supervised the construction of their first prototype. They had been working for 72 hours straight, teaching alien engineers while building at the same time. The aliens were quick learners, their natural intelligence showing through once they got past their initial resistance to primitive technology. The main drive shaft needs to be perfectly balanced, Mary called out, working with a team of aliens on a massive gear assembly. The aliens watched in fascination as she demonstrated how to check the balance using nothing more than a level and a straight edge. Suddenly, the lights flickered throughout the ship. A warning announcement echoed in both alien language and translated English. Life support failing in sectors 12 through 15. Emergency protocols activated. We're running out of time. The young alien engineer, now known as First Builder, said urgently. He had become their strongest supporter and quickest student. 4,000 people are in those sectors. Bob looked at their prototype, a mechanical drive system that would use the basic principles of physics to move the massive ships. It wasn't ready for testing, but they had no choice. We'll have to test it now, he decided. Mary, is the primary gear assembly balanced? Close enough for a test, she replied, her voice tense but confident. The next hour was a blur of activity. Human engineers and their alien students worked side by side, making final adjustments to the prototype. It wasn't pretty. A massive collection of gears, pulleys, and drive shafts that would harness the power of the ship's remaining energy cells and convert it into mechanical movement. The fleet commander arrived just as they were preparing for the test. The council is demanding results, he said. They're talking about evacuating the outer sectors, cramming people into the inner ships. Give us 1 hour, Bob promised. He turned to his team. This is what humans do best, making things work when they have to. The test chamber was cleared. The prototype sat in the center, looking like something from Earth's Industrial Revolution, rather than a piece of advanced space technology. Bob gave the signal, and power was fed into the system. At first, nothing happened. Then, with a groan of metal against metal, the massive gears began to turn. The drive shaft spun, slowly at first, then faster. Mechanical gauges showed increasing power output. It's working. First Builder shouted, his skin glowing with excitement. The power conversion is reaching useful levels. But then a terrible screech filled the air. One of the main gears was slipping, its teeth grinding against its neighbor. Sparks flew from the assembly. Shut it down, Mary yelled. But before they could cut the power, the gears slipped completely, and the entire prototype shuddered to a halt. Silence fell over the workshop. The fleet commander's shoulders slumped. Perhaps, he said quietly, we were wrong to place our hope in simple machines. No, Bob said firmly. He walked over to the failed prototype and examined the damaged gear. This is exactly what makes these systems better than your quantum drives. Look, one gear failed, but we can fix it. We can see exactly what went wrong and make it right. He turned to the gathered aliens. Your quantum drives failed, and you couldn't even understand why. But this, he held up the damaged gear. This is something we can fix. This is something we can teach you to fix. First Builder stepped forward. He's right, he told his commander. I understand now why they still use these technologies alongside their advanced ones. Because when they fail, you can repair them with your own hands. The fleet commander looked at the damaged prototype, then at the determination in both human and alien faces around him. Finally, he nodded. How long to repair it? 2 hours, Bob said. And this time, it will work perfectly. Because now we know exactly what we did wrong. As they began repairs, the warning lights continued to flash. reminding them of the thousands of lives depending on their success. But now there was hope in the workshop. Hope born from the simple truth that sometimes the oldest solutions are the best ones. The next test would work. It had to. Because on the outer edges of Earth's solar system, humans were about to prove that there was still room for simple machines among the stars. The second test of the prototype was about to begin. The workshop, now covered in tool marks and welding burns, had become a symbol of hope for the entire alien fleet. News of the humans' mechanical solution had spread, and viewing screens throughout the ship showed the test chamber. Bob stood next to the rebuilt drive system, which looked very different from its first version. The aliens had contributed their own ideas this time, combining their advanced materials knowledge with human mechanical principles. The result was beautiful in its own way, a perfect blend of both civilizations' expertise. "Primary support systems ready," Mary called out, her voice steady. She had worked with First Builder to redesign the gear system, making it stronger and more efficient. The young alien now stood proudly at the control panel, his fingers hovering over the power controls. "All sections report ready," the fleet commander announced. He had not left the workshop since the first failure, watching and learning alongside his people. 5 million lives are watching this moment. Bob took a deep breath. "Begin power-up sequence." First Builder engaged the systems one by one. The massive gears, now made from alien alloys that were lighter and stronger than Earth metals, began to turn. The sound was different this time. No screeching, no grinding, just a smooth, powerful hum. "Power at 20%, First Builder reported. His skin glowed with a bright blue light, a sign of excitement in his species. 30%, 40%. The whole room held their breath as the power levels crossed the point where the first prototype had failed. But this time, the machine continued to run smoothly. "Full power," First Builder announced triumphantly. The drive system was now operating at peak efficiency, converting power into mechanical energy that could move the massive ships. Measuring instruments showed outputs that exceeded their initial expectations. "It's not just working," Mary said, checking the readings. "It's working better than we calculated. The combination of our mechanical design and their materials." She shook her head in amazement. The fleet commander stepped forward, his translator device struggling to convey his emotion. "You have done more than save our people," he said. "You have taught us something we have forgotten, the value of understanding the basic principles behind our technology." But their work was far from over. Building one prototype was just the beginning. They needed to construct and install similar systems throughout the fleet, and time was still against them. The fleet commander opened a communication channel to all ships. "Send your best engineers to the flagship," he ordered. "It is time to learn from our human friends." What followed was the largest engineering training program in either species' history. Human engineers taught hundreds of aliens the basics of mechanical engineering, while the aliens shared their knowledge of advanced materials and energy systems. The flagship's massive manufacturing facilities, originally designed for quantum technology, were repurposed to create mechanical components. The aliens' artificial intelligence systems, still functional for basic tasks, were used to optimize the production process. "It's amazing," Bob said to Mary as they watched aliens and humans working together. "They're not just copying our designs anymore. They're improving them." He was right. The aliens, once they understood the principles, began suggesting modifications that made the systems even more efficient. Their deep understanding of materials and energy, combined with human mechanical knowledge, produced solutions neither civilization could have created alone. First Builder approached them with another improved design. "We've found a way to increase efficiency by 12%, he said excitedly. "And we can manufacture the components 30% faster." The fleet commander joined them, looking at the activity around them with pride. "Our historians will mark this as the moment we remembered something important," he said. "Technology should serve us, not control us. Understanding how things work is just as important as making them work." As the first full-size drive system was completed and ready for installation, Bob looked at the massive manufacturing operation around him. Humans and aliens worked side by side, sharing knowledge, solving problems, and building something new together. "We're not just saving your fleet," Bob told the commander. "We're building a bridge between our civilizations. Every bolt, every gear, every weld is bringing us closer together." The commander's skin shifted to a deep blue of agreement. "Perhaps," he said, "this was the real reason we were meant to meet." The work continued around them, as two civilizations raced against time to save 5 million lives, learning from each other with every passing moment. The vacuum of space turned bright, with welding sparks as thousands of workers, both human and alien, moved across the hulls of the massive ships. Earth had sent more engineers and technicians, along with huge cargo ships carrying the manufactured parts needed for the fleet-wide retrofit. Bob watched from an observation window as space-suited figures worked on installing the massive drive systems. 3 weeks had passed since the successful prototype test, and they had already completed retrofitting 20 ships. But time was still their greatest enemy. Life support failures are spreading faster than predicted. First Builder reported, joining Bob at the window. "We've lost access to 30 more sectors across the fleet. We're moving people to the completed ships, but it's getting crowded." Mary entered the observation room with fresh data on her tablet. "The good news is we're getting faster at the installations," she said. "What took us 5 days on the first ship now takes just 2. The aliens have become excellent mechanical engineers." Outside, they could see the results of this cooperation. Teams of aliens, now confident with primitive tools, worked alongside humans to install the huge mechanical drives. Each ship required careful coordination. One mistake could doom thousands of passengers. Installation Team 7 reports ready for power-up. Came a call over the communication system. Everyone turned to watch through the window as another ship prepared to test its new drive. The massive vessel's hull began to vibrate slightly. Then, slowly but surely, it moved under its own power. Cheers erupted through the communication channels in both human and alien languages. "That's the 21st ship operational," Bob said, marking it off on his checklist. "But we still have 279 to go." The fleet commander entered the room, his usual calm demeanor showing signs of stress. "We've had to evacuate another ship completely," he reported. "Its quantum systems went into complete collapse. We barely got everyone out in time." "Move them to the completed ships," Bob suggested. "We can use the empty vessel for parts. Strip it down, use everything we can." The commander nodded. "Already ordered. Our people have learned much from you about making do with what's available." A loud alarm suddenly blared through the ship. Red warning lights flashed across all screens. "Emergency in Sector 7. A voice announced. "Structural integrity failing." Bob and First Builder rushed to the engineering station. The displays showed a critical failure in one of the installation areas. A team of workers was trapped between sections, and the hull was threatening to breach. "Get me a communication link to the trapped team," Bob demanded. When the link opened, he could hear the panic in their voices. Both human and alien workers, stuck together. "Listen carefully," he said calmly. "You've got tools with you. Look around. What do you have?" The team reported their available equipment. Bob quickly drew a diagram, showing how they could use their welding gear and spare parts to create a temporary support structure. "It won't be pretty," he told them, "but it'll hold long enough to get you out." The next 15 minutes were tense as the trapped team followed Bob's instructions. Everyone watched the structural integrity readings, holding their breath. Finally, the team reported they were safe and the emergency was contained. "That was too close," Mary said, checking the damage reports. "We need to be more careful with the installations." But First Builder saw something else in the incident. "Did you notice?" he asked. "The alien workers didn't wait for complex solutions or AI assistance. They used what they had, just as you taught us. 6 months ago, they would have panicked, waiting for automated systems to save them. The fleet commander placed a hand on Bob's shoulder, a gesture he had learned from the humans. "Our people are changing," he said. "We're remembering what it means to solve problems with our own hands and minds." As they watched more teams return to work, continuing the massive retrofit project, Bob realized they were doing more than just saving a fleet. They were helping a civilization rediscover something they had lost: the joy of building, fixing, and understanding the machines that kept them alive. 279 ships to go, he said, turning back to his work. "Let's get back to it." Outside, against the backdrop of stars, humans and aliens continued their work, racing against time to save millions of lives, one mechanical drive at a time. Months after the first prototype test, the last ship's mechanical drive system roared to life. Bob stood in the flagship's main observation deck, watching as the entire fleet hummed with new energy. Where once there had been silent, stranded vessels, now 300 massive ships pulsed with mechanical power. "Final system check com. 3 pleat." Mary's voice came over the communication channel. "All ships report ready for departure." The fleet commander stood beside Bob, his skin glowing with a color that the humans had learned meant deep gratitude. "When we sent that distress signal," he said, "we hoped for help. Instead, we found teachers, friends, and a whole new way of looking at technology." First Builder, now the head of the fleet's new engineering corps, entered the observation deck with a group of his fellow aliens. They no longer looked at simple tools with confusion or disgust. Instead, they carried them with pride, understanding that true engineering meant knowing how things worked at their most basic level. "The last 3 months have changed us," First Builder said. "We've learned that progress isn't just about making things more complex. Sometimes it's about remembering the foundations." Through the massive windows, they could see Earth ships preparing to return home. The human engineers and technicians who had worked tirelessly to save the alien fleet were saying their goodbyes to their alien counterparts. Many friendships had formed during the long hours of work. "Before we leave," the fleet commander announced, "we have something to share with Earth." He gestured, and a group of alien scientists entered, carrying data crystals. "These contain some of our quantum technology knowledge. Not everything. We've learned the danger of relying too heavily on advanced technology, but enough to help humanity take its next steps among the stars." Bob smiled but shook his head. "That's generous, but it's not the most valuable thing we're taking from this encounter." "Oh." The commander tilted his head curiously. "We've learned from you too," Bob explained. "Your materials science, your energy systems, when combined with our mechanical knowledge, they've created something new. Something neither of our civilizations had before." Mary joined them, carrying a simple mechanical watch, the same one she had shown the Alien Council months ago. But now it had been modified with alien materials, making it more precise and durable than any watch ever made on Earth. "A perfect blend of both our worlds," she said, handing it to First Builder. "Keep it as a reminder." First Builder accepted the watch with reverence. "We will never forget what happened here," he promised. "Our children will learn both ways, the advanced and the basic. They will understand that true progress means mastering both." Through the windows, they could see the fleet beginning to move into formation. The new mechanical drives, while not as fast as their original quantum systems, would get them safely to their destination. More importantly, they could be maintained and repaired by their own people. "It's time," the fleet commander said softly. He turned to Bob and extended both hands, a formal gesture of his people. "How do we thank those who saved not just our lives, but our future?" Bob took the commander's hands in the traditional alien way. "By remembering that no civilization grows wise by forgetting its foundations, and by staying in touch. Humanity would love to hear how your journey goes." The farewell ceremony that followed was broadcast to both the alien fleet and Earth. Millions watched as the massive ships, one by one, began their journey away from our solar system. Their huge mechanical drives, built by both species working together, pushed them steadily toward their new home. As the last ship departed, leaving only the human vessels behind, Bob looked at his team. They were tired but proud. They had done what seemed impossible: save millions of lives using nothing more complex than gears, levers, and the combined wisdom of two civilizations. "You know what this means?" Mary asked, watching the alien fleet disappear into the distance. "We're not alone in the universe anymore, and our first allies came to us not because of our advanced technology, but because we remembered how to use the simple things." Bob nodded, thinking of all the changes this encounter would bring to both civilizations. "Sometimes," he said, "the greatest advances come from looking back and remembering where we started." In the years that followed, both humanity and the alien civilization would grow and change. But they never forgot the lesson learned in Earth's solar system, that true wisdom lies not in complexity, but in understanding the simple principles that make the universe work. The Great Repair, as it came to be known, marked humanity's first step into a larger galaxy. And it all began because humans remembered what a more advanced civilization had forgotten. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one.